welcome back to our opposition preview on Up the Villa podcast. If you're new, subscribe, drop a like, and comment your thoughts in the comment section down below. So I'm joined by Dan from the Green Pole. How are you, mate?
Very well, Luke. Thanks for having us. Looking forward to Sunday's game, getting a bit closer. The nerves are starting to build ahead of the trip to Villa Park.
Yeah, cool. Nice one. So going to just, like we always do on the opposition previews, get a real understanding of what's been happening at Fulham, really. So I think we'll sort of start in the summer because it felt like you had a bit of upheaval in the summer with sort of like Marco Silva maybe leaving and you lost your big striker Mitrovic. So how was the summer? Because I imagine, when that sort of stuff happens, it's, you go into a season with a bit of like trepidation, really. So, how was the summer sort of going into the new season?
Mate, it was absolutely dreadful, Luke, because as you know, as a follower of football just wider than the Villa, Fulham have had this cycle of we're the archetypal yo-yo club in recent times. We're really good at getting out of the Championship, but we don't want to be really good at getting out of the Championship. We want to establish ourselves.
Yeah.
Get in the Premier League, and we were just up, down, up, down, up, down, and we'd finally cracked it, or at least we had a really good season. Sorry, I've got a dodgy light bulb here. We had a really good season last year, and you mentioned Marco Silva, and he's really the catalyst for that. But the main reason why we were so potent in the Premier League was because Alexander Mitrovic finally proved that he could score goals in the top flight. We thought he could do it, but he did far better than we the diehard sort of Mitrovic believers, when everyone else had written him off, assumed he would do. And obviously the Saudi money got put on the table and it became quite a saga. And we hoped that we would be able to hold on to him because he scored 111 goals. He's fifth or sixth in the club's all-time goal-scoring ranks, and he was a real hero. And to lose him in the manner that we did, sort of right at the end of the window and with the season already starting, it had real disruption. And you mentioned there in the other part of the question, it wasn't just him. The Saudis, in their infinite wisdom, came for Willian, who was a surprise signing last September and did really well. If I'm 37, he's 35, and he's still performing at a level of a 25-year-old. And we all sort of laughed, we got this guy who sort of bombed out at Arsenal. What can we expect from him? And he became an integral part of the team. And they even came for Marco Silva as well. And it looked like it was going to be a disastrous window because the one you didn't mention is the player who's most important to Fulham is João Palhinha, who I'm sure we'll get on to. But João made us competitive in the midfield and had a terrific first season. And we very nearly sold him to Bayern Munich. And we would have sold him to Bayern Munich had we got a replacement. And honestly, I think had that happened, not even Marco Silva would have been able to keep us above the relegation line. So, yeah, we'd had a wonderful first season back. And everyone was really excited about, Fulham can kick on, not to the Champions League. We're realistic about our progress, but instead of like attracting people to the club, we spent the summer trying to hold on to our key players and not being successful. So, yeah, I absolutely hated it, and I'm dreading the January window already as well.
Yeah, so that leads us on to Fulham's start. I think you're sitting like 15th, so it's not been the greatest of starts. I've watched you a couple of times and I've seen good things and I've seen bad things. I've seen you against United and I thought, I don't think you deserve to lose to United. There were so many times on sort of like transition that I remember tweeting when the game was on, like you're literally just driving through the middle of them and they were just like separating. And then I saw your performance against Spurs where you were like playing out from the back and it was, I think Bassi sort of made two sort of like mistakes in that game and it was frustrating. But even in that game, at the start of the game, you created some chances. I think you had a header and the keeper saved it. So just talk to me about sort of like the start of your season. Like, how's it gone? Because, we've already spoke about you've lost your main goal scorer. So in the Premier League, most teams that struggle don't have a goal scorer. And now it kind of feels like because you haven't got one, you're kind of struggling a little bit to sort of like put the ball in the back of the net, basically. So talk to me about the start of your season.
Yeah, I think if we're being blunt, to be polite about it, we can't finish our dinner at the moment. You know, we always struggled in the previous relegation seasons to score goals. And when you're sort of a bit ropey defensively, that's not a great combination. And so you'll know obviously that Fulham signed Raul Jimenez, who's someone who's well known to followers of Midlands football because of his achievements at a club local to you that I won't mention. I don't want to swear on your podcast. But Raul is obviously not the player that he was given what he's been through, and he was always intended as sort of an option. As one of sort of 3 or 4 strikers. He's been the main striker and he hasn't scored for Fulham, never mind in the last 32 Premier League appearances, I think it is now. He was really unlucky actually. He hit the post at Everton on the opening day, and had that gone in, you know, it's like yourself as a striker. If you're with your new club, when one goes in, you might go on a goal scoring run. But the issue is, yeah, we don't have. You're never going to be able to replace Mitrovic either. He's not someone, you know. He did so many things for Fulham. Hold the ball up, a physical threat to occupy defenders, and he was also good in the penalty box. You know, the archetypal English centre forward, if you like. Strangely, for a mad Serbian that he is. And the issue is, we've got 3 really great backup forwards who you'd be happy to sort of offer, you know, off the bench. And actually, our most potent young striker is playing for Blues at the moment. And we won't, again, I won't.
Well, I mean, when you were saying about a swear word for Wolves, I think you've just ruined it there.
I've really got my copybook. Yeah. I actually know. Got to know Jay Stansfield a little bit, and I did sort of warn him that wouldn't, you know, he'd make himself very unpopular in one part of Birmingham through no fault of his own by making that move. So, but the irony of, and I apologise to all your listeners, obviously.
That's fine.
But you can bleep it out, hopefully. Now, he's done really well at the place that shall not be mentioned, but we're left with very little at the moment. And also, you have to kind of change the way you play, because Mitrovic, as I said, did everything and did it all well. None of the strikers that we've currently got can link the play as effectively as him, can hold the ball up as effectively as him, or run it or as deadly in the penalty area. Indeed, they endanger some of us. My seat is right behind the goal, and with some of the shooting, you know, that we've had, I feel in danger. I should wear a hard hat or something like that. So you know, and it obviously puts extra pressure on the defence, which largely, apart from, you mentioned Calvin Bassey doesn't have a right foot, and everyone has worked that out because we lost Issa Diop to injury earlier in the season, a bad injury against Sheffield United. So we've had to play 2 left footers and you know, the uninitiated would think, well, footballers should be able to kick with each foot, but we know that, you know, asking them to do something slightly different can be troubling. And you referenced also the fact that we play out from the back, and we do. We take phenomenal risks with the ball, as a lot of teams do now. But we kind of always have, and that's Marco Silva's philosophy. And I'm quite relaxed about that, because occasionally we'll score a great goal of wonderful passing. And, you know, everyone talks about high pressing and it's in vogue at the moment. But I actually, you know, I've watched my fair share of dreadful Fulham teams over nearly 4 decades of watching Fulham, and most of it has not been good, Luke. You know, and I'm talking sort of 4th division going out of business. You know, the boats on the River Thames were a more attractive thing to watch than some of our football. So this feels like even relatively a good period. But I've watched my fair share of dreadful Fulham sides, and I think at the moment the problem is we're slightly insulated because, and I don't wish to be disparaging about other teams, but there are sort of 3 or 4 sides that are struggling to pick up points. So yes, we're down in sort of 15th, and we should be looking over our shoulder. But we can't be blasé about it because Sheffield United got a win at the weekend, and we're on this run of fixtures at the moment. You referenced Tottenham, Manchester United. I'm still sick of that one. We really did give them a good game, and that's not saying much really with Manchester United at the moment. They're not the force that we remember them being, and we could really have beaten them. And we're just at that point where one of those sort of speculative shots from distance needs to go in. And obviously, United scored a very late deflected winner. And when your luck's out, your luck's out. And we're obviously coming to Villa Park on Sunday. I'm a really big fan of Unai Emery in terms of how he sets his teams up. He's really transformed the Villa. It felt like last season we played two different Aston Villa teams. Obviously, the game at Craven Cottage was Steven Gerrard's last, and it was apparent from very early on in that match that maybe the players weren't putting the shift in that you would expect. And the turnaround, you'll speak far more fluently than I about exactly what Emery has done and how he's lifted Villa. But, when you look at the history of Aston Villa and a massive club, not just in the West Midlands, but in the UK and Europe and the world, and the quality of the football that Villa are playing, when we sort of reference how we're playing, and then I look at the number of players who will sort of come back into the team after your European match, it is quite frightening. I'm sort of looking there and thinking, blimey. And we kind of got away with it last year. It was a narrow defeat. But on that night, Villa had a spell where it looked like you could score 3 or 4 and you didn't. And then we kind of came back into it. And the problem is, without that focal point that will guarantee you occupying some of your very good centre halves, we worry about being able, because the wingers and the midfielders then have to weigh in with the goals, and they haven't been doing that. So we've only scored 9 goals in 11 league matches, and that kind of tells you where the problem is at the moment.
Yeah, we've kind of got a lot to thank Fulham for as Villa fans, really, because we lost you in the playoff final, and we had an owner that was just, I dread to think. I dread to think what have happened if we'd have got promoted. And then last season we have to thank you because, that's probably one of the worst Villa performances I've ever watched at Craven Cottage, and we got the sack after that. But then you've also got a player still in your squad that gives shivers down my spine every time I see his name, Tom Kearney. When he scored that winner. So you mentioned Paulinho. So would you say he's by far your best player? Because I really like Robinson. I think he's a real lively player. I've really rated him every time I've seen him play. Who would you say are sort of like your standout players, ones to watch out for?
Well, so Anthony Robinson, who is known as Jedi, because as a kid he loved Star Wars and he took his Star Wars figures everywhere. And I've never known a footballer have such a bizarre nickname. we got Jedi, as he insists on being called, Anthony, from Wigan when they got relegated into League One from the Championship only a couple of years ago for about £2 million. And to your point, he's become, in the Premier League, had 2 really good Premier League seasons. The only problem with him is that in the modern game where you expect your fullback to deliver in the final third, sometimes his crossing is not where it needs to be. And that was one of the problems for the game against Manchester United on Saturday. But we're quibbling, really, given the progression that he's made over a period of time. And he's become a real firm favourite with the fans because you referenced one of our playoff victories, and I won't prolong your bad memories of that day at Wembley. We did go up again after that because, of course, our joy at winning for the first time at Wembley ever was soon tempered by the fact that we had a disastrous season and found ourselves back in the Championship. And the first choice left back in the Championship was Joe Bryan, who scored twice at Wembley in the next playoff final when nobody could go.
We shouldn't really mention him either, should we?
No, quite, yeah. Didn't he drive away from Steve Bruce down the way or something?
He was, Brucey was chasing him.
is that like an urban myth? I mean, because
apparently he was in Birmingham
About to
And he
sign,
was at,
right?
yeah, and then he got the call because you were in the Premier League, weren't you?
That's right.
So he was going to come to Villa. He got the call, and then he went to Fulham. So it is true. I don't think Brucey was chasing him, but
And Steve Bruce does
yeah,
have a history of this because we had a striker called Ross McCormack who was very good for us, and then he
yeah,
kindly spent a lot of money on Ross, and he
yeah.
didn't really produce for Villa. And there's a story that Ross didn't turn up for training and said his
Yeah.
gates didn't work, and Brucey went round and hurtled over his gates, and you know he does seem to get himself in those positions. Anyway, I was saying that Joe became a hero because he scored in the playoff. That might be the end of my life. He's coming back. Joe scored in the playoff final and was the first choice. I'm going to try and move into some better lighting for you. Hold on.
Okay, yeah.
Oh, here we go. Just as I'm on the move to give you a grand tour of the palace. And he was the outstanding left back. And then we bought Robinson in order for them to compete with each other. And Robinson became really consistent in the Premier League to a level that we didn't expect him to. So he's been brilliant. I would say Palhinha is the key player he's the fulcrum of our midfield, because everyone says, he's brilliant at tackling, and he is. He does pick up quite a lot of yellow cards. Indeed, even jumping he's learned that you can't jump into the crowd to celebrate some of his wonder strikes because you get a yellow card for that. But he does more than just make tackles. He can score important goals. He's a good distributor of the ball as well. And he has all of these attributes that make him so important because, as we referenced, we're not scoring goals, so the games are much tighter. And he just brings that. He's played in the Champions League. He's just clear. We got him for sort of £18 million from Sporting Lisbon, under the nose of one of your Midlands rivals, who I won't mention. But we're still not sure how we managed to get him for that money and how we've managed to keep him. And he's now signed a new contract. So he's one of those ones that goes under the radar. And then I would just say Bernd Leno in goal is fundamentally one of the reasons why we're still in the Premier League, because he's making save after save after save. He did that last season. I would say that, of the Arsenal goalkeepers who were in the squad at the time, he's a German international, and I think Mikel Arteta's judgment on goalkeepers has been proven to be a bit iffy, if you like. He's really important in making sure that we don't concede too many goals, which is vital when you're not scoring as many.
Yeah. So finally, we'll turn our attention to the weekend's game then. So what do you expect from the game? How do you feel like it's going to pan out?
I'm worried about it for the reasons I mentioned previously. Villa have some frightening options in the forward areas. We know Ollie Watkins very well because he played for our local rivals before he came across to you. And I was so pleased that Ollie Watkins has got that England recognition, because he's been a consistent performer for such a long time. But you also have threats from all over the pitch in that, and the way that Emery has worked the transition as well. You talked about our transition against Manchester United. It feels like Villa have options in all areas of the pitch, and even if it's not working, you can bring some really exciting talent off the bench, which is really important with the 5 substitutes that we have now. I think it's been a long time since we've won at Villa Park, and I'm not holding out too much hope at this point of like some sort of glorious victory. And if we were going to do it, it might have to be a sort of smash and grab. But I think that's where Marco Silva as a manager, he's just he won't accept like putting 10 men behind the ball and shutting up for a 0-0, which is good because I don't think we'd be able to do it with the squad as it is at the moment. So I think we will try and come and play, but perversely that might help Villa get through some of the weaker parts of our side. And I didn't reference Tom Cairney. His knees are not quite where they were sort of 5 years ago, so I don't think you have to worry about him being dominant figure in midfield as he was previously. I think it will be one of those sort of, it's a weird, because you're used to this Thursday, Sunday thing now that can disrupt the season. But I think Villa have got enough quality to make it work. Would that be your view in terms of how you juggle the fixture? It doesn't seem to be impacting too much.
Yeah, it seems to be okay at the minute. I think we lost one of the games from Europe once we was in like the qualifiers, but since then we've been pretty good really at balancing it out. And like you say, Unai, he's quite meticulous in his details, so he tends to get the team pretty spot on most of the time anyway. But yeah, Dan, it's been great chatting to you, mate, and hopefully you have a good rest of your season.
Absolutely, pleasure, mate, and same to you. And good luck to all the Villa fans for the rest of the season. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you.